A very good morning, everyone. Today we'll be studying the Unit 6 of our course, that is Social Control and Nationalization of Banks. What do we mean by these two things, social control and nationalization of banks? We'll be getting to know about these things in the presentation itself. I am Dr. Sanjay and we are studying this we are studying this unit as part of your course AG Con 201 Agricultural Finance and Cooperation. So let's begin. These are the contents, or you can say the flow of presentation. What were the banks, or what the banks were supposed to do ideally in 1960s, or can say after independence, and what they did really, and what was the problem, because RBI did not have much power to correct the present situation. That's why government came in and enforced social control. This turned out to be inadequate, and then we went in for nationalization in phase 1, which went successful, and that's why we did it again in 1980s, that was phase 2. And in the end, arguments in favor of nationalization of banks, and some people said it was good, some people said it was bad, and what did they say? We'll be studying about it. I'll be strongly suggesting that I'll not be providing any reading material for this course, for this unit in particular. So please make your own notes out of this PowerPoint presentation. The content in this presentation is quite a lot. It is quite exhaustive, so you'll need not to refer to any other kind of source for preparing your own notes. So let's begin. See, in the 1950s or 60s, or after the independence, you can say, the banks were ideally what they were ideally supposed to do, because India was born at that time. The government was working to develop this country from all the sides, but this was not happening. Why? What was the role of banks? Which should have been, and what it didn't do? It should have been what it should have ideally done. It is the most important part of the economy because it handles money, handles exactly what we call it, savings of people. It takes money from people, people deposit their money, and it lends further to the needy ones. Needy can be anyone who is ready to provide a security, take a loan for a business, and repay it on time. Okay. Banks were supposed to help the government integrate banking with planning. The government used to plan for the growth of the economy, or the country had 5-year plans, that for these 5 years we'll be focusing on these areas, and the banking was supposed to help the government in developing, or can say in implementing those plans, by providing money, or can say loan, to the desired areas. This is how banks are supposed to function. Alright, help the country attain the optimum growth rate. The growth rate, you can say, growth rate of the income of the country should be quite good. Banks can play a big role in it because by providing loans turn into investment turn into factories or manufacturing of any kind of thing. Factories means jobs means money means demand of goods, and this demand of goods is in turn fulfilled by factories. So this is how it functions. So banks have a very good role, a very big role in providing loans to different sectors of the economy, so that in different sectors of the economy, different types of people will get job, different types of goods will be consumed. Okay. Also, it needs to prevent monopolies or concentration of wealth. Monopolies means, let's say simply, Jio these days has kind of a monopoly, because Airtel and Vodafone Idea, these are suffering. Jio has monopoly in the telecom sector. So banks are supposed to help the government not let such things happen, because whenever there is a monopoly, initially they will provide, let's say, data to you at very cheap prices, but later on, when there is no other provider, all of them all of, let's say, Airtel is closed, Vodafone is closed, they can charge any amount. It can get very expensive, so they can exploit you. Okay, so banks are supposed to help in, you can say, prevention of monopolies. Monopoly is also again called as concentration of wealth, when any one family, or can say any one businessman, is just leading the whole sector. When telecom sector is being ruled by the Ambanis, or can say gas sector is being ruled by the Adanis. So this is not supposed to happen. Banks are not supposed to let this happen. Prevent misdirection of resources. Resources here I mean simply is money. Money should not be given to people who are, say, engaged in hoarding, who take loans from banks and hoard important food stuff, so that there is a shortage in the market, which leads to price rise, unnatural price rise. Therefore consumers suffer. So this should be the role of the banks. This should have been the role of the banks, and in the present day also, this is how the banks are supposed to help the government, help the economy to do its best. All right, this was the ideal situation, but ideal is not what happened. What they did in reality, what happened was, they neglected the priority sectors. What are these priority sectors? Banks did not provide credit to these priority sectors. These priority sectors include agriculture, medium, small, micro enterprises, that you can say small businesses, or can say village industries, and education, etc. Because agriculture is quite big here, agriculture and allied activities are a lot. All these things accounted for less than 1% of the total credit advanced by the banks, total loans given by the banks. Just 1% of the loan was given to these priority sectors. And you can imagine yourself, this sector would have at that time included more than 90% of the people of the country, more than 90%, and they were getting only just 1% loan. So they were completely dependent on private money lenders, which charged anywhere between 30% to, let's say, 60% rate of interest. So they were quite trapped. Alright. Second thing, they didn't provide credit to the priority sector. Assisted hoarding and speculation, which we discussed on the last slide, it leads to price rise. Okay, and price rise, when it is artificial, made by storing food stuff and creating artificial scarcity in the market, is bad for the people. But the banks did it. Credit was mostly given to the industrial houses. Why it was given to the industrial houses? Because those industrial houses, banks are providing credit to a customer, so that banks earn interest, and after providing credit to these houses, their interest was ensured. That's why it was profitable for the bank to give loans to them. Plus, this cannot be the only reason, because these industrial houses these banks at that time were private. Banks were private. Let's say the Bank of Baroda Limited. This was a private limited company. These were private companies. Okay. So in these private companies, these industrial houses had people in their board of management. So their men were there in the bank management. Also, the men who were there in the management of the bank, they were also directors of some other industry. They had their own factories. That's why they gave loans to themselves also. Big industrial houses, giving loans to them was profitable. These industrial houses had their men in the management of the banks. The people in the bank management themselves had industries. That's why most of the money went to these big businesses only. Alright, which led to concentration of economic powers. Because once you own factories, once you own industries, you have a lot of money. you can influence a lot of the economy. You can influence jobs, you can influence income, you can influence the spending of the people. That's how the concentration, let's say there is one big industry and one big industrialist controlling that industry, and it is employing, let's say, 1 lakh people, and a small change in their policy of the income or working condition can lead to changes in income, lead to changes in spending, which will affect the economy in a big way. All right. It did not help the new businesses. They were busy in lending to the existing businesses, and they were not helping the new people who wanted to invest money, okay, who wanted to start their own businesses. Disproportionate distribution of credit, let's say some regions got higher amount of loans, some sectors got a higher amount of loans as compared to others, so there was a disparity. Unfruitful planning by the government. As I told you in the last slide, government used to prepare 5-year plans for the development of the country, and when the banks did not cooperate, let's say the government is planning to focus on agriculture sector, the government can give only a little amount of money because it does not have enough amount of money to reach each and every farming family. But the banks had a lot of branches, a lot of, you can say, a big spread, but the banks did not want to give loans to the agricultural community and allied activities. So the plan of the government to develop the agriculture without the help of the banking industry was futile. It was not fruitful at all. It did not work. So let's go again. This is what was supposed to happen. Banks are the most important part. They were supposed to integrate banking with planning, help attain optimum growth, prevent monopolies, prevent misdirection of resources. But what they did was neglected priority sectors, assisted hoarding and speculation, which leads to price rise, which is bad for the country. They gave loans to the industrialists only because they were controlled by them. Which led to concentration of economic powers. They did not help new businesses. There were disproportionate distribution of the loans in different areas and different sectors. Unfruitful planning by the government. The plans made by the government were not turning out to be fruitful. Okay, so that was the ideal situation, and this was the reality. What what can we do now? Plus, because of the real situation, as I mentioned in the last slide, plus the RBI did not have enough powers to take care of the situation, to tackle the situation. RBI did not have enough power. Okay, government wanted to have some control over the volume of the credit and direction of the credit. Volume means the quantity, direction means where the loans are going, to which sector. Let's say it is going to industry of which type. Is it going to this area or that area? Is it going to agriculture? Is it going to, let's say, marginal small and medium enterprises? Is it going to village industries? So government wanted to have some control over the quantity of money being given to people and over the direction of loans that are being given in the country. But at that time, in that present situation, RBI did not have any kind of power so as to allow government to have such kind of controls. It had negative powers. It could say you cannot give more money to a particular sector. Let's say it would say you are not supposed to give any more loans to the Tatas. Then what? If you are not allowing them to give loans to the Tatas, it does not mean that they will give loans to agriculture. No, they will not give. They did not have any kind of positive powers. They cannot say that give loans to people in this area for agriculture. Banks were private, they refused to obey the RBI because RBI did not have any kind of, let's say, supervisory power or statutory power which would legally bind the banks to do what the RBI says. It did not have the power. Due to this situation, the concept of social control came in. Social control means the control by the government. It was a term coined by politicians at that time. Politicians, or you can say political pundits at that time. Social control essentially means the control of the government or of the nation. Where the nation wants to go, it should go there. Social control is a kind of control over banks so they help in economic growth as per national priorities and make credit available to producers of all fields. Producers mean manufacturers of industries, and can say farmers of who are, let's say, producing different types of things. Farmers may be in the allied fields, or farmers may be growing crops or horticultural produce or any kind of thing. So social control is simply means where the nation has its priorities, the money should go there. This was called social control. Social control was enforced in February 1969. It had two parts. First, a National Credit Council was made. Second, an amendment was made in Banking Regulation Act of 1949. What was there under this National Credit Council? It had few mandates of its own, few objectives. It had to assess the demand of credit of different sectors of the economy. Let's say in Madhya Pradesh, how much credit is required for agriculture, how much credit is required for industry, how much credit is required for livestock, for piggery, for goats, for anything else. It was the job of this National Credit Council. It was also its job to determine priorities, where the money should be, where the money should go, so that maximum growth takes place. Let's say people in Jharkhand were very destitute, they were very poor, and it was urgent. There was a sense of urgency that money or loans should be provided to those people so that at least they come out of poverty. They have a respectable standard of living. This is all about priorities. National Credit Council was supposed to determine these priorities. In which areas, in which occupations should the credit flow towards. Coordination between all banks, all types of banks. Okay, commercial banks, private commercial banks, public commercial banks, cooperative banks, plus government departments. Government departments also get some money to spend on their respective areas. Okay, so it was the job of National Credit Council to coordinate between them. It had 25 members, 5 were permanent. Of, let's say, there were big people from finance ministry, from different from RBI also, and 20 non-permanent members. They were from different fields, experts you can say, of each and every field, from all the fields of agriculture, from all different types of industries, from banking, and some scientists maybe. Okay, these were the members. What happened to this was immediately dissolved after nationalization, and nationalization happened in the same year, July 1969. So this National Credit Council functioned only for, let's say, 4 to 5 months. Okay. Second part of social control was amendment was made in Banking Regulation Act 1949. See, as I told you in the last slide, there was a lot of money going to the industrialists because they had people in the board of directors of these private banks. So what happened was, what RBI did was, in this board of management, maximum people, or can say majority of the directors, should be specialists of different fields. Okay, and the nominees, or can say the nominees of the industrialists, whom the government know these are the nominees of the industrialists, they should be minimum. These should be in a majority. Alright, and if the banks, let me take the pen again, and if the banks were not ready to make changes, the RBI was given statutory power, legal power to make these changes. Okay, make these changes. Restriction of credit. There was restriction put on the banks that lend they cannot lend to their board of directors, the members of their board of directors, okay, or to companies where these directors were apart, companies where these directors were apart, so that the money stops going towards these big industrial houses. All right, industrial houses were controlling by putting their men in the board of directors, and the board of directors had their own industries. So the restriction was put that board of directors should have specialists, and the nominees of these industries should be minimum, and the credit should not go to the people who are there in the board of directors. So there was a plan made so that the money stops going to that side and money comes to the side where it is important. Government of India, another change was made in the banking regulation act was Government of India can acquire the banks in case of a default was found by the RBI. Okay, but what happened was even after this social control thing, even after making a National Credit Council and amendments in Banking Regulation Act, it was very soon realized that this experiment of integrating banking with planning is by Government of India, was realized that it would be inadequate in realizing the goals of the economy, because India needed to reach to their goals very quickly, because green revolution was also happening at that time, so people needed money to buy high quality inputs, by the can say improved seeds, fertilizers, and different types of inputs, and also other sectors of the economy needed to be developed. So what happened was nationalization was done. Nationalization of banks was done. What happened was the government took over the banks. These banks were private. Let's say the Canara Bank Limited was made a government bank. These two things were removed. The Canara Bank turned from private to public. Okay. It happened on 19 July 1969. By this ordinance was brought: Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Ordinance. Okay, transfer from private to the government, acquisition, that the government is acquiring the banking companies, because these were private companies. These were companies registered under the Companies Act of 1956 maybe. Under this nationalization phase, 14 banks were taken over by the government. Each of these 14 banks had deposits of public of rupees 50 crores or more. Total 14 banks, the government got this much of money and this much of network of the banks. Okay. During this nationalization phase, all the staff, all the assets, premises, that is where the bank was situated, even the names were taken, and compensation was given to the shareholders, to the owners or shareholder of those private banks. Okay, some money was given to them. What was the benefit of this nationalization? The list of these 14 banks is given down here. Okay, this is not very important which banks were nationalized when. So even if you want to know, you can read it out here. So what were the benefits of this nationalization, and did we get anything out of it? Yes, we did. In the next 6 years, this much of offices were opened, and out of which nearly 50% were opened in the rural areas. So there was a lot of new banks coming up in the rural areas, which led to average size of the population served per bank fall from 65,000 to 32,000. Average population served by a bank. Let's say a bank had a pressure of 65,000 population. Let's say we had a bank over 10 villages earlier. Now we had a bank over 5 villages. Okay, this was the can say impact of nationalization of banks of phase 1. Seeing the benefits or seeing the success, again the second phase of nationalization happened. It happened in 1980. 6 more banks with the deposit of each having deposit of minimum of 200 crores. Earlier 50 crores, now 200 crores were were nationalized by Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertaking Act 1980. Same act, just the year is changed. You should remember these names, these are important. What was the benefit again? In the next coming years, 5,384 offices were opened in the unbanked areas, which was very important. This was called as branch expansion. And credit to the priority sectors, as I mentioned: agricultural, micro, small, medium enterprises, that is different types of small businesses, village industries, and to education, home loans, you can say new industries. These loans went from 1% to 39.3% in 92. See, in 1960s it was just 1%, 1990s it went up to 39.3%. So you can definitely say nationalization worked. Okay, and 16% out of it went to agriculture. We did not have any kind of share in 1960s. It was now having 16% of the total credit. Okay, now moving on to what were the arguments in favor of nationalization. People said whatever the banks will be earning, the profit of the banks they will be earning will be going to the government of India. So the government of India will be getting a lot of money. They will promote the interest of the depositor. Earlier, what the private banks used to do was they would lend money to industrialists. Okay, that was indeed can say profitable, but not always in the interest of the depositor. Sometimes they give loans for people who are hoarding stuff, which leads to price rise. Okay, and these depositors are finally the person who will be facing the brunt of this price rise. These are actually the customers of the stuff that was hoarded. Okay, so banks generally can say worked against their depositors also. Now after nationalization they were not hoped, and it was not hoped that they will work against the interest of the depositors. They were now supposed to work in the favor of the depositors. Okay, taking power from the hands of few. When you are not providing loans only to the industrialists and you are providing loans to the new businesses and priority sectors, other parts of the economy will develop. Okay, everybody is going to get rich. So the power which was earlier in the hands of only few industrialists controlled the whole economy. All the industrialists, all the industries were in the entire country were controlled by, let's say, 5 people. Now new businesses have sprung up, and there are, let's say, 15 or 20 or even hundreds of industries with new owners. So the power, actual power of the economy has been divided now. Okay, people are having money, more people are having money. Stabilizing the prices by not funding people who are hoarding stuff. Okay, that's, if there is no hoarding, then there will be no artificial price rise. It will be good for the consumers as well. Lending to the priority sectors, as you can easily see, this was one of the main motives for nationalization. Opening more branches, yes, that is important, and this is what happened, as I told you in the last slides. Nationalization phase 1 and nationalization phase 2, in both the phases branch expansion happened very rigorously. Okay, implementing government policies in a better way, yes, definitely it helped. 5-year plans, as the government made plans, they gave directions to the RBI that this much of credit should be provided to this sector. Sector 1 should be provided this much, sector 2 should be provided this much, so that our objectives of developing, let's say, agriculture, developing, let's say, mining, developing cottage industries of particular type, if they are getting loans, they'll be, you can say, in developing at a better pace. Changing the goal of banking. Earlier the goal of banking was simply profit making. Okay, now it was social service. Plus profits they made, but profits were only for keeping them alive, for running purposes. Okay, main goal was social service. Social service means providing loans to the extremely needy sections of the society. Checking tax evasion. See, all the transactions, most of the transactions which go by banks can be supervised. Earlier, these transactions went from private banks. Supervision was not easy. That's why it helped change the situation of tax evasion, removing disparities between regions. Some regions were credit starved and some regions had a lot of credit facilities. Let's say in Haryana, and compare now with Jharkhand. In Haryana, comparatively, there is a lot of credit facilities available because people here are having a lot of land and secured income. That's why banks are ready to open their branches here and provide loans. But in case of Jharkhand, where there is a tribal society, banks do not want to open branches because the running cost of opening branches, they'll need a lot of people to open branches, they'll need to open a lot of accounts, which costs bank a lot of money, and these tribal people might not have enough money to deposit in the accounts. So the banks are spending, they're not getting any money, they're spending on establishment, they're spending on giving loans, but they're not getting anything back. So there is a disparity. Banks do not want to go this side, banks want to come here. There was a disparity, but the government by law can say can ask the banks to open branches in unbanked areas, so disparities reduce. Successful implementation by other countries such as Italy had done it earlier, France had done it earlier, USSR had done it earlier, and other countries like Libya and Burma, they all had done it. That's why this nationalization was done. So these are all the arguments in favor of it. So some people who negated nationalization, what were their arguments? We'll see here. Financial burden over the government, because the government had to pay shareholders of these private banks for taking over somebody's property. Government has to pay some money to them. So they said, people said that you will be unnecessarily spending money, a lot of money indeed, and you will not get enough benefits out of it. Risky and uneconomic lending. Private banks considered lending to small and marginal farmers and other starved sectors of the economy as risky. That money will go in, we will give them the loans, but they will not pay it back. It was uneconomic to lend them. Okay, and even if the government takes over and starts lending to them, it will lose money and ultimately the banks will close. So this was their argument. Neglect of public property. Whenever a bank turns from private to public, whenever anything turns from private to public, people don't have any respect for it. They do not consider it anyone's property, and they do not have any respect for it, and they'll neglect it completely, and ultimately it will stop functioning. As you can see, sarkari property to sarkari hoti hai, nobody takes care of it. Let's say even if a bulb is fused, they'll not change it. Okay, they'll blame it entirely on the government, that the government should provide even a small duster and a chalk, everything, although it is supposed to, but even if it is not providing, then you can even spend it out of your pocket and maintain things. Okay, so this is just to prove the point that people generally neglect government property. Okay, it was a harsh step. Social control happened in Feb 1969 and nationalization happened in July 1969. So not a lot of time was given to the banks to fulfill the objectives of the government, which the government wanted to be fulfilled through social control. Not a lot of time was given to banks to show that they were able to run as per the priorities of the government. Okay, reduce efficiency. Same argument. Private industries or private undertakings are more efficient, and public sector undertakings are less efficient. It's an era of privatization. Many Scandinavian countries like Scandinavian countries like Denmark, Greenland, and Sweden, they were privatizing their sectors, all different types of sector, and you are going in the reverse direction. Slow service, again an argument that in the public sector the workers or the officers don't have rights to take decisions immediately. Let's say if I need a computer in my office, I'll have to go to my HOD, he'll have to go to the dean. It will take at least 2 to 3 months to procure that computer, and then I'll start working. Okay, so you can see this process is quite slow, but in the private you can go directly and buy it in the market. Okay, so yes, indeed this was a valid argument, but yes, in case of some it is valid, in case of some it is not valid. Okay, corruption and favoritism. Corruption, as it again it is blamed for the public sector. People will be demanding money, workers will be demanding money for jobs to do, and favoritism, as it happened in the private banks, it will happen in the public sector banks also. Diluted quality of manpower. When you go for branch expansion, you'll need a lot of people, and how come you are going to get a lot of people in such a short span of time? That means you have to reduce your standards. Okay, so these were the arguments against nationalization. So let's rephrase everything. What banks were really supposed to do, they didn't do it. Okay, what happened then? Didn't do it, plus the government had no power. So what they did, social control. In it came National Credit Council plus amendment in the Banking Regulation Act. After it was realized that it was inadequate, then came nationalization of banks, phase 1. It was successful. Then came nationalization of banks, phase 2. Herein 14 banks, herein 6 banks. They were both successful. In the end, arguments in favor of nationalization and against nationalization. Okay, so I'll be signing off with this. This was your unit 6. Will be all. This will be all for your midterm examination. Okay, from unit 1 to 6 and unit 10. So I hope you get this topic, and if you have any kind of doubt, we'll be going through it in different topics in different doubt classes. Or if you still don't get a chance to, or if you want to take your doubts early and then those doubt classes, you can always post me in the WhatsApp group during the class timings, please, or I'll be answering in the class timings. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed or you will enjoy. Thank you.